Hey, Buddy Manning here. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the Garden Report back in Boston after a couple games in Cleveland. And Dakhil is here to talk about the Celtics' run so far that's about to turn to another Eastern Conference Finals appearance for them. Going against two beat-up teams in these first two rounds, two good defenses, which I think has put some interesting offensive tape out there on them. And plenty of conversation around Jayson Tatum's performance in this postseason so far that turned for the better over the last two games here in Cleveland. Two important wins, grinded out wins for the Celtics on the road. And wasn't pretty, Mo, through the last couple here, really through this whole run so far. But they're getting it done. I love the defense so far, but we're going to mostly talk about the offense here, whether it needs to get better, how it can get better, and what role Tatum has in that. So what's been your overall impression of their run so far?
I mean, first off, it's just been easy,
Yeah.
for the most part, right? And that's no fault of their own. I know people are gonna criticize them, and this is the easiest route any team's ever had to the Eastern Conference Finals or whatnot. That's not really fair to them. They don't have any control of Jimmy Butler getting hurt. They didn't have any control of Mitchell with the calf strain and things like that. They just keep doing their job. But it hasn't felt like playoffs for them yet have started, which, maybe
No.
a good or bad thing in that sense, but it just hasn't had that feel. Yeah, they had that really ridiculous game against Miami. Miami shot the hell out of it from three. Also, I didn't think the Celtics really tried to defend them from three in that game too. And I think that led to a lot of those problems. And then, in game two in Boston in this series, this one felt like Cleveland actually took it and fought for it a lot harder. And I think that was a bit different. But come on, it's hard, Bobby, to really get that excited about the Celtics series because I'm just like, they should win these pretty easily.
Yeah, for you guys nationally, I think this is the one you're tuning out, just like it was in the first round for the most part, because with some other good ones out there, and we'll get to those in a little bit. But as easy as it's been, it hasn't been easy for Tatum. And the looks he's seeing, certainly a big part of that. Miami showed him a crowd. Cavs rotating guys over. I was talking to Dean Wade a little bit about how they're just guarding him in layers when he's going to the rim there. So he's being forced to either finish in traffic through a ton of bodies in there or, kick it out and get some of these other guys going. And I think he's done a solid job of it. But how much does he need to improve his own efficiency, his own scoring for this team to get where they want to go?
Well, I mean, I think the starting point is his shot selection from three, right? Like he's shooting
Mm-hmm.
very poorly from three, below 30%. With that, and I think it comes down to, just sometimes he feels like these are the threes I need to be taking, and it's the ones off the dribble that I absolutely hate. He had one, I'm gonna steal a term from the great Nate Jones on Twitter. The strive for greatness three that LeBron always takes is that little sidestep three.
There's a more explicit term for it too, but
yeah. But I like the strive for greatness. Just seems more fun.
Right.
But he kind of took that one, off the dribble, one bounce, and then to the sidestep. And I was just like, we just got to get that out of the game, out of his game. It's just not his shot. It's not something that I think is really conducive. I think that's where he could be more efficient, is in that shot selection. But I think overall he's done. I mean, the numbers aren't great. He's not going to blow you away, although he had a nice night the past two games. He's had some nice numbers there, but it's not going to blow you away to the point where you're like, wow, this dude's unbelievable or whatever. He's just taking what the defense is giving him and making the right reads. I mean, this is the lowest field goal attempts he's averaged in a playoff series, besides his first two, which don't really count because he wasn't really the guy in those series, right? And, starting 2019, the 2019-2020 season, he was kind of stepping into that role as the guy, and that's where his playoff numbers started to go up. And I think this is the lowest field goal attempt since then. And I think it's all what you said. Defenses are focusing in on him, keying in on him, and he's making the right read. So I'm not that hard on him in that sense.
What is it with the threes and him? Because he turned it around this season. The last couple of years weren't great for him from deep. This year, I think he got to 37. He takes difficult ones. I think that's the main point you're trying to make there. I saw at one point this year he had like the most step back threes by miles. I know one we get frustrated on here a lot on the show is the step back over the big, and you've seen him with Mobley floating out on him. You've seen him with even Tristan Thompson out on him at points in this series, just stepping back and launching that three. And it's probably part of their offense. Like I don't think they want to be taking layups in traffic at the rim and potentially having like a 5-on-4 go the other way. So I think that's a big reason, and along with trying to limit turnovers is the other thing I've kind of heard for why they shoot as many threes as they do. But I think one thing I've always said about Tatum in this offense, the one we've watched the last 2 years, is they sort of make him do all the difficult stuff to make it easier on everybody else, and it works to some degree. But it must get frustrating for him at times, just seeing the crowds he does, taking the difficult shots that he does, and putting up some of the shooting stats that he does here. I do think a lot of it is intentional just to free up the other guys. And it's been interesting to watch in this series. Obviously, when Porzingis is out there, you have that easy outlet to him. One thing that the Cavs have tried to do here is funnel the ball to Horford. And you see over the last couple of games here, that's led to some rough shooting nights for Horford there. So this series is probably over, but you just see with each passing series here how teams that are a little bit more equipped to hang with Boston could try to guard them.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that frustrates me about the Celtics offense is, and it wasn't the case last night, they only took 32 threes for the game, is that they shoot so many threes that I feel like sometimes it might just be better to go get that layup. And risk of a turnover be damned, or having to finish over.
I think we lost you there.
I got too excited and unplugged my mic. So, the situation there. Hopefully, you guys can hear me all right.
Yeah, I got you now.
But like the just the being so risk adverse so that we're going to shoot more threes, like that's such a bad reason to shoot threes, man. Like that's just we're afraid of turning the ball over, or we're so focused on our transition defense that we don't want to go to the rim. I'm like, you're at your best when you go to the rim, man. When Tatum's attacking and drawing fouls at the rim, drawing the big in a crowd at the rim, and then making the kickouts. Those are the threes I want. I hate the dribble pull-up threes from some of these guys. Like, Drew Holiday is going to make some, but his shot selection is like, whoa, it's risky. And I think you're playing with fire in that regard when you're the Celtics. And I think when you play a better team, you tend to you'll see it. And I think for me, my strategy just in general would be like, hey, I'm going to just guard the 3-point line because that's the shot they want the most. I'm going to make them play inside the arc, and then let's go from there. And you just see it in the games where they don't shoot a ton of threes. They're at least a bit closer if they're not losses.
Do you think Tatum could benefit? I'm trying to pull up the shot chart from last night. He got about 4 mid-rangers to go, and he's not a mid-range maestro. I think for a lot of his career, he's shot closer to 40% than 50% from there. But he hasn't taken a lot of them in recent years. Like he's stepped out to 3. He's taken more of those, as you mentioned. He is getting close to the basket with some of the post-ups and stuff that we saw this year. More drives at times, getting to the free throw line more often. But that mid-range with him, it sort of seems like it could be part of his game just based on his skill set and how he entered the league. But as time's gone on in his career, they've sort of phased that out. Is that something you think he could benefit from going to a little bit more often?
Absolutely. I mean, just look at the game last night in Dallas. Shea beat the Mavs with this mid-range game. I think, we've kind of gone too far in this anti-mid-range sort of thing. And, over the years, it's such a important, especially in the playoffs, an important shot in the sense of you want to be a 3-level scorer. You want to be able to be a threat to score at anywhere on the court. If I'm playing Tatum and I know he doesn't want to take the mid-range, or he's not going to take a lot of them, cool. I'm going to defend him at the 3-point line, and I'm going to meet him at the rim. I'm not worried about the dribble pull-ups, and not to say that he can't make them or whatnot, but it's like, I just know he's not going to take them. And that's something I actually used to say about James Harden a ton when he was in Houston with that stuff. I think we get too bogged down into like the analytics telling us this is a bad shot. I said, this is a shot that makes the defense have to work and makes you more unpredictable offensively, which stresses the defense. And I think that's an important aspect to it. I mean, that's why I think having a 3-level scorer is huge. And I think that's the important thing that Tatum just needs to bring back to his game. Because I'm with you. There's no reason he can't. A dribble pull up at the elbow, like he should be able to nail those. I don't want him to live strictly in that. I'd like it to be a balanced diet, but having that in your arsenal and in your toolbox matters. And I think that's an important thing. So I'm with you on that. Like I think it's a shot he should be working to develop again.
Yeah, and of course, we're going in on him right now and kind of breaking it down and putting him under the microscope because the expectations are so big, and the opponents they could potentially see down the line here pose a lot more defensive challenges against them. There's a lot of good defenses left in the playoffs. Indiana, if that ends up being the team they play, not necessarily one of them, so they might catch another break here with the way that next series is going, and we'll get to how that's going to shape out here at 2-2. But the last thing I'll say on the Celtics offense, I'll give it some credit because they've had some bad shooting nights. They've had these inconsistent performances from Tatum, and they've still figured out a way to win 6 out of 8 games here, whatever, 6 out of 9. And a lot of that's defense. I think their defense has been incredible this postseason, obviously going against some teams with limited offensive arsenals. But they've honed in on that end in a way that I think they didn't last year and killed them last postseason. So I'll start there. But also on the offensive end, they're a very analytical team, as you know, Mo, with the threes and everything else. But I think Joe became a little bit more flexible this year. Like, you see the post-ups, you see them implementing like some of the offensive rebounding to try to counteract the 3-point misses. Like, all that stuff is something they worked on throughout the year, and it has played a nice role in their offense just persevering through some bad shooting nights in these playoffs. Like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they were like 19 and 20 last year when they shot below league average from 3. I think they were like well over 500 this year when their 3-point percentage went below that mark. So I'll give them some credit too. Like, this is a much different postseason so far. Obviously, the competition hasn't been there for the most part, but they've been in some rugged games and some bad shooting games that they probably would have lost last year.
Yeah, and I'll the one thing I'll say, and this is more my big complaint with Boston, is their offense, only because I don't really know how to describe it. Like, there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or rhythm to what they're doing in terms of like how
the
they're getting into
Porzingis
the
thing,
stuff.
right?
But even before Porzingis got injured, right? It was always, like my biggest criticism is it's a one note offense, right? We're running one action and then we're diving into one-on-one most of the time. They do run stuff. They run plays. They've done some nice stuff, some slice cuts to get Tatum a post up, things here and there. Like, I want to see more actions built around this team. It might not matter. Their offense might be so good it won't matter. Their defense is so damn good they still might win a championship just off the strength of that. And all my complaints can just go out the window. But I just think like they don't have like a definable system, right? Like, at the end of games, they're just going into a pick and roll, and whoever has the ball is going one-on-one, right? And hopefully they get a switch. Like, when you watch the teams like Denver, when Denver has it, they have their horns action. We know it's going to Jokic. We know they run the Jokic Murray pick and roll, but they also have the horns action that includes Gordon a bit involved in that stuff. You're seeing different things from different teams in terms of what they go to. And I don't feel like Boston has that. It's just the same thing. It's just a side picker. It's a hard diet to live on, especially at the end of games. But, hey, their answer could be, we're not going to play any close games. I mean, yesterday's game was the first one in the play
so far. Yeah,
has been. Hey, if we don't keep it close, we don't have to worry about our end of game offense. And maybe that's the case, and that's what we're going to get. But it worries me that I wish this offense had more layers to it.
Why don't you think it does?
It's just so very much like, besides the pick and roll where they get a switch on Porzingis and he either takes you at the free throw elbow or takes the small down to the post, or they've set up a post up for Tatum. A lot of it is just off of pick and roll, right? And there's not much beyond that. There's no backside action a lot of the times. There's no, hey, we're setting the double pin downs into dribble handoffs, and while that's going on, these guys are exchanged. There's just not a lot of that stuff there. I wish it had more of that, because I think it could even be better. I think it could even take them to another level where it's like, damn, they got this great defense. And then they have this offense that has you running ragged. So now you're kind of really struggling on both ends of the court if you're playing against them. I think their offense tends to become predictable. And when it does that, and that's any team, by the way. And they're not the only team that does this. I'm singling them out because they're the team I think that's going to represent the East in that regard. But like, I just feel like it becomes easier to defend. And it may not be easier for a team like Miami down Jimmy Butler. It may not be easier for a team like Cleveland or Indiana if they play Indiana, or even the Knicks, who have maybe 4 bodies by the time that series ends. It becomes a bit more predictable, and it becomes a little easier, and in that sense, that allows defenses to figure out how we can take you out of it. I don't think they have that sort of unpredictability offensively.
Yeah, and you saw it last night. After that Brown bucket at the 8-minute mark, it's Holiday 3, Tatum turnover, a long Pritchard 2, Tatum pull-up 3, couple Brown free throws. And Brown's been incredible in this series, by the way.
Great. He's been great. Almost under in all our complaints about Tatum, he goes doesn't get talked about. He's been awesome.
And his game's so weird because he does embrace the mid-range area. A lot of times he's got guys in his face from mid-range and he's still hitting it. He's the one thing you hear about this team around the league the most in just my time covering them is they just hit difficult shots.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it makes them so trick or treat a lot of the time offensively. When the tough shots are falling, it's like a tsunami, going over your defense. And they're good at them. And Porzingis is part of that too. Porzingis hits some shots where you're just like, how? But then when you're taking those and they're missing them in droves, that's what leads to some of these droughts. And down the stretch last night, it was a lot of pull-up threes. It was a kind of grinded out pace with the lead, 5-7 point lead. They're starting to slow down a little bit. You get that putback from Tatum that was a saving grace there. And then, Tatum found Brown for that 3. But a lot of misses down the stretch, a slower pace. That's the biggest thing with them. I think you have a good point with all the, lack of sets we see from them. But it's really just a pace thing. When they play with a good pace, they find good shots. They find the mismatch. That's kind of what they want to do. And that's what led to them being that, super efficient, all-time efficient offense that they were this year, even without some of the, complex sets that you mentioned there.
It's amazing that I can actually have these complaints and they've been one of the all-time
no, but you get it because at their worst, they grind to a halt. They really do.
And it shows, it's so obvious when it starts to happen.
Yeah.
Right. You can all feel it. I mean, all your listeners are Boston fans. They've all felt it. They've all had it in games. You felt it where you're just like, oh God, we're going to do this again. And it's just, you don't have to live that way. It's all I'm saying. It's you just don't have to live that way. You can make it a little bit easier. And I think that's on the coaching side of it, of like, hey, we can put you guys in stuff and make your lives a little bit easier. And from that, get you better opportunities.
What stands out about their defense to you? Because it's a lot better this year. They don't force a lot of turnovers, which was one gripe I have. And I think at times in this series, you've seen them lean into the drop a little too much. And I think they've adjusted that well. They've gone to some more switching. That's put Horford in a tough spot. And they really are putting a load on him right now that is making you hope that Porzingis can be back sooner rather than later. At least the series can end on Wednesday and just get some extra time off there. But they're making them work, the Cavs are. And I think the Cavs have done a decent job in spots, trying to find vulnerabilities at the rim. But Holiday said something interesting last night that they actually want the Cavs shooting in the paint. They want them there inside. If they give up some of those dump offs to Mobley or whatever it might be, that's better than the threes falling for Cleveland. And last night they hit a ton. They shot a ton early on, and then they kind of disappeared for Cleveland late. So even on the defensive side of the ball, and we've talked a lot on this show about it, Mo, they're playing an analytical style of trying to take away those threes, dropping back at the basket, taking that away. And I was actually surprised to see going into the series, the Cavs shot like the fewest mid-rangers in the league, and that's killed them here because that's the shot that's available against Boston.
Right, and that's why I always say that mid-range is actually a very important playoff shot. Just most teams will take away the 3 and try to meet you at the rim. The defense, though, I love it. I love it, and it all starts with Derek White and Drew Holiday. Derek White being able to fly around and take on guards and things like that allows Drew Holiday to get to freelance and
Yeah.
allows Joe Mazzulla to actually put him in different positions. We saw it with the zone earlier in the year, right? Like, hey, man, we're going to run a 2-3 zone. And instead of Porzingis in the center, we're going to put Drew in the center. And you're just going to wreck shit and go nuts. And I think that's kind of what happens. And you get to do that because you have White and Tatum's good defensively, Brown's good defensively, Horford, is going to struggle in the switch. And I think that's kind of what we saw a little bit in that game yesterday, with Cleveland continuing to kind of try to attack the switch. And I understand the thinking with Holiday in that sense. And especially early on when the Cavs were hitting threes, like Strus had like 5 threes, I think, in the first half or something like that. Like, he was on fire. And I think, once you kind of lock down on that, it began to kind of fall off. And it's saying, okay, we got to start attacking the rim more. And I think it was a very interesting thing. I have no qualms with the Celtics defense. I might quibble on a possession here of, oh, you should have rotated, but like, for the most part, like, they are rock solid defensively. Even if they don't force a lot of turnovers, for me, it's like they do a good job. They limit you to one shot. They force you into tough shots. They're constantly rotating. They're in good position, and they end it with a rebound. Like, there's not much more you can ask, from a team defensively other than that.
Yeah, and they've really gone in on trying to expose the weak link on that end too. Like, everything on their defense is sort of just the reverse of a lot of their offensive philosophy. Like, they're hoping
Right.
Okoro puts up those threes and misses, and they're gonna shy away from him. And at times they've had Al on him in this series, and I've had some gripes on that because Mobley has gotten going a little bit in some spots while Al's played away from him. We mentioned that on our last show, but it does end up coming back down to earth. And for all the criticism Mazzulla has gotten about that analytical style, especially with the talent the Celtics have had here, it sort of does end up working out in the end, especially over the length of some of these series.
Yeah, I mean, that's just all it is. I just think sometimes the defensive end, it works. It's great. I worry sometimes of these teams that are too analytical. Sometimes they lose a little bit of their soul and kind of forget, like, hey, basketball sometimes just freewheeling stuff, and you got to let it go. And whatever you get is what you're going to get. And I think that's, to go back to kind of the offense, I think that's why the mid-range shot is somewhere where I think the Celtics should probably invest more, not just in Brown, but in Tatum taking those more. But that's also an off-season thing. We can't expect him to start doing that now in the conference finals and the finals, most likely.
Yeah, but one thing he was doing in the year, early in the year, was the post-ups, and I feel like we've seen a
Yeah.
little bit less of that even into the playoffs here, at least, just at a glance. I haven't seen him going there as much. I'm sure part of it is the crowds he's seeing and just the attention he's drawing there. But they were using him as a screener in a good way in game 2. They ended up losing that game, but he and White, they pair nice there, and they've been able to get
Yeah.
to that a little bit more with Porzingis off the floor, which they have to, because Horford's not really going to give you that pick and roll threat. That, as you said, is at the heart of their offense. So they have to go to some small stuff there. And White and Holiday, like, those are, for all the great stuff you can say about them, those are 2 of the best screening guards I've seen around the league.
Easily. Those guys are awesome. And I think that's the one part, like, I went on a podcast a while back and I said, Derek White's the most important Celtic. I wasn't saying he was the best player, but he's the most important Celtic, because literally he just runs around and just screens nonstop, and he gets guys open
He's so
off of these
active.
screens, and it's flying around. And then, like I said, on the defensive end, he enables them to unlock Drew Holiday, because Drew doesn't have to necessarily take the best perimeter guy. Derek White can. And then you can let Drew kind of just roam or do his own thing and get going from there. And I think that's kind of why I look at White as so important for this Celtics team.
We're going to get into some of the teams they could see in the East Finals here, and really just what's going on around the league as a whole. I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. Go over there and use our code CLNS to get a 100% deposit match up to $100 right now. The playoffs rolling along. Second round, soon it'll be the conference finals. All of them, great times to go over there. See what the projections are. Points, assists, rebounds, it's all there going into any game. I'm just always interested to go see, like, what they think guys are going to do on any given night. For Tatum, they've been high. We've gone less on him a lot, but he's starting to turn it around. He goes more the last couple of games. It's our official daily fantasy sports partner. Just pick 2 guys, pick more or less on their stat projections, and you're off. It's that easy. You can have up to 6 guys and win many times your money here. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Check it out. Get that deposit match here. We got a Knicks Pacers series that's going to continue here tonight, and it's gone to a weird place. It felt like I'm just devastated because a year ago I was dreaming of Celtics Lakers just for the storylines, for the LeBron factor there. It was just been a great series from like a narrative perspective, and even just the energy around that series would have been so great, but it doesn't happen. It's Denver Heat. Blah. Now we're on the verge of Knicks Celtics. First time in 11 years that would have happened. All this energy in New York, championship aspirations in Boston, and all of a sudden everybody's hurt on the Knicks, and they just have this game 4 where it looks like there's 0 left in the tank. I don't know how that's going to change. I guess Brunson's hurt too, and he's playing through it. Do they have any chance to pull out that series with where they are health-wise?
I mean, they do. I don't want to kind of, really crush them to the point that it's like I don't feel like they have any chance. Like, let's just also start with the fact that Indiana was unbelievable in that game. They hit a ton of shots early, really buried them early. It was their energy, their pace, the way they pushed everything and got going. But like it's a uphill battle for them, even with just theoretically 2 home games if this goes 7. I think it's a tough situation for them to really lock in, and they're going to have to really lean on actually the Garden. The Garden has to go nuts, and really kind of carry this team forward into that stuff. Like, I'm serious, like it's wild,
Yeah.
but like Indiana didn't win either of those games in New York, right? It was 2-0, and then they evened it that way 2-2. It's still one of those things where the home team has won every game. They're going to need Brunson, though, to be like, listen, Brunson finished, 4th in the MVP voting? They need him to be at that level. And at the same time, need Dante DiVincenzo to hit hot shots. Need Josh Hart to make massive offensive rebounds. Going to have to figure out where you're going to get defense from on Halliburton, Siakam, and how are you going to kind of continue to make those guys' nights miserable. Got to deal with the TJ McConnell comes in and just a little super energy that he brings in. But like this Knicks team special, man, like I wonder if they find a way to pull this one off. I still would probably pick Indiana, but it's going to be a tough one.
Which of these teams do you think would give Boston a better series? I think you would obviously look at it going in and say the Knicks at full health. But the Celtics did go 4-1 against them during the year. That last one was the game changer a little bit because it was the first game with OG between those two teams. The Knicks just went out and rocked them. They were up by 30 at one point in Boston. And, they have that fantastic record with OG in the lineup. So I think the answer would be obvious at full health here. And I still think there's some things the Knicks can do that can bother Boston. But you're probably looking at Indiana right now just because of the health, right?
Yeah, just the health. Like, listen, if it was a fully healthy Knicks team, I'd say the Knicks. But like, the one thing with Indiana that I don't think even Boston's going to struggle with a little bit is just the speed and the pace they play with. It's frenetic. It's hard. Like, I try to clip plays, during the games, and it's too fast for me. There are times where it's just so fast. I just go, nope, I'm not clipping any plays right now. I'm just going to sit because it's just da 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 da. And it's not just, hey, they run off makes, misses, turnovers, dead balls, whatever. They get the ball up the court. It's usually up the half court line with 20 seconds on the clock. They don't get anything in early in transition. They go to early offense. They don't get anything from early offense. They reset and then run into another offense right there. Like you're almost having to defend 3 different things if you do it right. If you don't give up the transition bucket, you got to defend an early offense, maybe a drag screen or a pin down. If you're able to stop that, then it turns into a Tyrese Halliburton high pick and roll. Like this is what I was talking about in terms of the difference with the Celtics offense, right? Like 3 layers to that. 3 layers. It's all of that stuff, and it's fast and it's bang, bang, bang. They don't waste time in trying to get into things. They don't waste time trying too hard to get into mismatches. And I think that's kind of the thing that makes them so difficult to play against. Their defense is bad, but they're just betting just on law of averages. You're going to miss enough shots and they're going to get more shots up. And I think that's kind of what they're hoping for. And I think that's what makes them interesting. And I think that would be a fun part to watch in the series going back and forth between Boston and Indiana.
Yeah, and the big thing with them is Halliburton's turned it around over these last three. He was shooting 43 from the field and 30 from three through the first 7 games of the playoffs. Last three, 34, 35, 20 points. A ton of threes falling for him now again, which was a big part of his, almost MVP caliber start to the year. And he's deadly. He can just be a hub offensively, and that's something the Celtics would have to deal with on either series, right? And Brunson's obviously a little banged up now, but you'd have to deal with him getting into the mid range. Halliburton, he's gonna take more threes, I'd imagine, against them. But they're both difficult guards to deal with in whatever direction this series goes. But if Halliburton's playing at the level he ends up being the scarier of the two here, at least with where Brunson's at health-wise right now, I'd say. And, just everything around them in that Pacers offense. I think the big thing, Celtics went 3-2 against them, Indy, but they got pulled in the pace in 4 of those games, I'd say. Like, the first one was a blowout. I don't think even Halliburton even played in that game. But some of the other ones were just like races to 120, up and down. One of them was 133 to 131. And I don't think that's where the Celtics want to live.
No, you want to slow it down, but that's also part of the magic with the Pacers. The Pacers had the Knicks playing fast. Tibbs didn't want to play fast. They were like, this is too fast for the Knicks. They can't do this, Right. And I think that's kind of the deal. Like, they're going to say, cool, you might beat us, but it's going to be playing it our way. And I think that's the big challenge: is how do you make it so that you're not playing their way? And that's also kind of like, actually, where probably the offense kind of helps is just being methodical, being maybe not being so slow, but just, hey, let's make sure we're going to run in transition, but opportunistic stuff when we know we have an advantage. I thought you're what you're hoping for is then, okay, if you don't have that, let's slow it down. Let's bring the ball up and let's make them work defensively, because they're not good defensively. And that's the thing. If you can make them work defensively, they can't guard you at all. They really can't. TJ McConnell's got no chance against Jayson Tatum, right? Like, that shouldn't even be like any of those things. It's going to be Siakam's and Miles Turner are probably their best defenders. Nesmith as well, and you might get a Nesmith revenge game here and there. But like, it's for the most part after that, like, you're going to attack Halliburton. You're going to attack McConnell in the half court. And those are the things you got to kind of jump on for Boston. But you got to try to find a way to stay out of that pace.
How much do they need Porzingis for this series, you think, whichever way it goes? Or could they survive another one without him here?
I think they could survive without him. I would be worried about Al, though, taxing him, especially if the pace is really up and down with all of that. And this might be the series that you go small and really just play 5, and I know people have been clamoring for it, but maybe it is Tatum at the 5. I don't know if I would necessarily do that, but
I don't think we saw that all year. Yeah.
I mean, and it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing. It's to throw that out there if you haven't done it all year. So maybe we won't see it at all. But like, if it's a series to do it, it's probably this one, because Turner is not going to really punish you in the post. But I think you can survive being Porzingis-less in this one. You won't in the finals. You have to have him for the finals. But I think in this one, I think you can survive this one, because I still think you guys got enough offensive firepower. I think you have. I love the defense. I think the defense is good enough, and strong enough to be able to kind of survive without Porzingis.
Is this their year? Do you think, with the path we're seeing here, and I think the biggest threat's obviously going to be in the finals as we look at it here, and I still would love to see Minnesota, Boston at that point. I think, the best offense arguably here against the best defense, and seeing, like, especially with where the league has gone, would be the most interesting thing to me. Denver, I'd give an edge over Boston. I think a lot of people do, just because of the way those regular season games went, and just the benefit of the doubt you give Jokic being the best player in that series. And now as Dallas, emerges as a potential one here, I think that would probably be the most favorable for them, because they can go at those guards. But I want to see Minnesota, Boston, just because we've seen it throughout the year. The officiating, the way the game's called, it's gotten a little less tight. You're seeing more defense. You're seeing teams be able to play more physically. And someone asked Joe about that, and he was like, "We don't love it, but we're gonna have to adapt." And I think that would just be a fascinating thing. I think the team that has taken more advantage of that new officiating environment than anyone has been Minnesota. You're seeing a guy kind of emerge as a budding MVP, perimeter kind of, match for Tatum there and Anthony Edwards. I just think there'd be a lot of interesting dynamics in that series. Plus, you see a team that wants to play a little smaller versus a team that wants to play bigger. But Denver comes out and wins those last two, and you're like, oh, all right, where's that going? So I think those are probably the two teams you'll see against Boston at that point. They're the most interesting ones left.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think OKC they're too young, even though that was a gutty win from them last night, really kind of on the backs of Shea. But I think I think them and Dallas just don't have enough to really take on Boston. I think Denver would have the edge, and I think it would come down to end of game execution. And, part of it is Boston just hasn't had any close games, over the past, few weeks. So it is.
That would be the most frustrating way for Boston season 10 is just a close game, miscues, and all the issues they had there late in the year coming back and haunting them.
It's like the college teams that, like, I used to always think this way, when like a college team would blow everybody out and go like 29-0 going into the tournament, and then they lose to like some team that's like 20 and whatever 11 or something like that, but every game they've won have been close games, and that game goes down to the wire. You want the team that's been in it a lot more. And I think Denver's end of game execution, which is all Jokic for the most part, is just amazing, and then Murray's shot making ability. I give them the edge. I think Minnesota and Boston would be fascinating, because I think there's just so much we can kind of look at, the Edwards Tatum battle, and we know the content machine is going to make it all about those two guys. And then it's, who does Cat guard on the perimeter? How does he defend? Going on, assuming Porzingis is back or it's Horford, it's one of those guys up against Gobert, and how does that play out? There's just so many different little iterations. All the wing defenders that Minnesota can really throw at Boston is solid. And I think it's really impressive in that way. It would be a lot of fun. I would almost put it at a pick 'em. I don't know if I'd favor anybody at this point right now. I'd kind of have to put it at a pick 'em. If I had to pick, I'd probably, just because the Celtics have been there, I'd probably pick Boston, having been to the finals before most of this group in the past. Like, I would kind of roll with that, but like, it's a tight one right there.
Yeah, that'd be the best for the league too, I think, selling its two best young stars, best young American stars too, in many ways there. It'd be phenomenal. And they played two fantastic games during the year. I think they both went to overtime. The first one, Jalen had a game winner, and then the Edwards just came out and went crazy in overtime and took the first one at home. And then the second one was that great Tatum shot at the end of overtime, I think, in that game in Boston. Really one of my favorite Celtics wins this year, the one against Minnesota at home. So it's good matchups. Like you said, you got the perimeter defenders there. You got like a size dynamic that's going to be interesting as well. I'm still hoping they can get by Denver here, and we can maybe see that. But obviously, that's a much closer series now.
I'm worried, though.
You got to be worried.
If Denver has kind of woken up into being like, oh, yeah, this is how we're supposed to play basketball.
Well, that's one I got for you because I mentioned it. What is the biggest difference you've noticed in the officiating and the way that the points have just kind of drawn back compared to the first half of the year, and how that's impacted the playoffs so far?
I think they're allowing defenses to be a bit more physical, and I actually kind of like it. Not kind of like it. I love it. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I think let me just be honest with you. Nobody wants to watch free throws. It's like going to a football game that's all field goals. Like, what are we doing here, right? Like, come on, man. Like, we're going to go to a football game, and it was 12-9. What a game. It's like, terrible. We'd be pissed. I think it's I think also we created a situation, and I mean we as the NBA as a whole, where it was like, cool, I'm going to go in for a layup and just throw my body in the chest and just throw it up in the air. And,
That's the one they emphasize, right?
right. Yeah. And that's going to be a foul. And it was called so consistently. It's just like, damn, dude, it's impossible to defend. It's impossible. You can't play defense at that point. I like that they made the changes. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious with that stuff. I'd like them to crack down a little bit more on illegal screens, and we saw the big one in the Knicks game that everybody was all mad about. And I didn't think that one was that bad, but just in general, I think I'd like them to find more consistency on what is legal, what isn't in terms of the screening, and then really hammer that. But that might be, again, more of an off-season work and into next season. It is hard that they did it mid-season, but I think it needed to be done. And I think, it's so we can say it's unfair or not or whatnot. I think it was just getting way too out of hand where there was no ability to play defense. And I think it puts you at such a disadvantage for the game itself, where it was like the offense just looked so easy. It was boring, and it's, and then again, it's just easy to get to the line every time, Bomani Jones calls it insurance fraud. And I love that phrase. Like, it's, you just come in and, even the, hey, you're on my back, I'm just going to stop and let you run over me. Like, no, that should be an offensive foul. Or coming off a screen and stopping and trying to draw the 3 free throws. Like, I think the guy spent more time trying to get to the free throw line than trying to make the actual shot. And I think that became a problem for our game. And I'm glad they're beginning to crack down on it. I want them to stay with it and continue to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be, as we look ahead here, one of the defining reasons why the Celtics do or don't win the title here is their ability to handle that against some of these great defenses. And they've done a good job so far. I respect Cleveland's defense, respect Miami's defense, certainly. And they've had their ups and downs in these series, but here they are, 7-2, going into a Game 5 on Wednesday. Appreciate Mo Dakhil stopping by. Always great talking to him. You streaming tonight?
No, I'm actually I'm doing a podcast after the games tonight, but I do stream on Twitch quite regularly, even right after the games usually, or the next morning. Kind of just depends how tired I am. I'm exhausted, Bobby.
Luckily, I mean, the Celtics have been playing like 6-7 game series every round the last couple of years here, so it's actually been nice to have a couple, 5 gamers here.
little relaxation.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be going back to Cleveland, but we'll see. Game 5 Wednesday, probably no Mitchell again. Cleveland.com reporting that he's not looking good for tomorrow with the calf. So Cavs going to try to stay alive here somehow, some way without Allen and Mitchell. And it's a bummer they didn't get to play in this series because this probably could have been a better one, Mo.
Could have been more exciting, for sure.
Yeah. So check him out. He's over at Mo Dakhil _NBA on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you can find him. And of course, check out the podcast he's doing tonight. Knicks, Pacers. We'll get one game close to the Celtics' potential East Finals opponent here tonight. And then we get that Nuggets Timberwolves series continuing as well. So I'm looking forward to sitting back and watching that, Mo. Thanks for stopping by.
No, thank you for having me.
All right. Want to give a shout out to some other sponsors before we get out of here. You know them. You love them. We love them, especially here. And today, I mean, I just got back to Boston. It'd be a great day to go out and golf today. I got in a little late, but maybe tomorrow, maybe sometime later this week. Obviously, good weather's coming in droves here. So you can check out PXG for all of the golf gear you need if that's your thing this summer. And even if you aren't a golfer, some sharp stuff in here. Go check it out. It's pxg.com/Garden Report. Use the code Garden Report and get a 10% discount on all apparel at checkout. That's Garden Report at pxg.com. They got polos, tees, hats, anything you need for the course. To feel good on there. It's loose. You can get right in your swing through it. It just kind of floats over you. I love the way it feels, those polos for the course. And then, of course, the hats when the sun's going to be blazing into the summer here. So it's the perfect time to go over to pxg.com/Garden Report and check out what they have going on. And as I mentioned, it's Game 5 tomorrow. If you want to be in the house in Boston, check out the Game Time app. They got tickets, the best deals right up until and even after game time. That's when you want to get them. is close to the game on Game Time. You know, I've been going on there for years to see if he can score any deals on events, concerts, of course, the games. Celtics Cavs Game 5 tomorrow night. If you're going for the first time, you're downloading the app for the first time, use the code CLNS and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. That's the Game Time app. Love them. Love Mo as well. Thanks to him for stopping by. This has been a off day edition of the Garden Report. We are back tomorrow for Game 5, potentially the last of the series. Donovan Mitchell's status up in the air, looking doubtful for tomorrow, as well as Jared Allen's as he continues to recover from the ribs. Kristaps Porzingis inching a little closer to return. No timeline yet. He's probably going to be out tomorrow as well. Injury report about to drop shortly here, so we'll get all the designations there. But of course, expecting Allen, Porzingis to be out again for Game 5 of this series. The Celtics try to wrap it up. We'll be there. We'll be live after. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow night.